Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsors, BCW Supplies. Use code POPANIMECOMICS at checkout to get 10% off your entire order. It is an affiliate link, so when you need your bags, boards, long boxes, and all that other good shit, obviously save yourself some money because inflation is hitting hard. I also have a t-shirt that is available to purchase, and it is my t-shirt available in 16 different colors on Redbubble. And it is making fun of Taco Bell, Gundam, and the most interesting man in the world. And I do have some metal cards left over from my Kickstarter that you could check out. I got 40 of these bad boys left. Everything's up in the description, up above. And without further ado, and I don't want to bore you with all my sponsors, I have with me for the second time comic creator Arvid Nelson. So welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again, Andrew.
Yeah, no, we had a good time the first time. And obviously, a lot's changed with you. A lot has stayed the same. And we're going to get controversial. We're going to get fun. And we're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff. So, but before we do, I do want to remind everybody, because people are going to be hearing about your name for the first time. And you're not just coming off of, a random comic book. You used to work for Dark Horse and Dynamite. You did a bunch of books like Rex Mundi. You did some, I think, Tarzan stuff. You did some John Carpenter. I think you did some Deja Thorne. And I don't want to harp too much on all that stuff, but what was this like? And even talk a little bit about your background so people know who you are.
Yeah. Well, I've been writing comics since 1999. I mean, that's when I first went to the San Diego Comic Convention. I met the artist that I ended up partnering with for my first published comics, which is called Rex Mundi. It's the thing for which I'm best known. So I have been writing comics for a very long time. I stepped away for a long time to write a novel. I was not successful in getting it published. So, but I still really believed in the story. And that's how I know when I'm onto something, when I encounter difficulty and I don't care. So I decided I would adapt it as a comic. And that is how I returned to comics. And it's funny. I can't really say I stepped away from comics because I did a lot of for hire work for a lot of companies, but I always tried to stay out of the politics. I always told myself, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter." So I stayed off of social media. I stayed out of the politics completely, but that is becoming harder and harder to do.
Not anymore, you aren't.
That's right. That's right. It's becoming harder and harder to do.
So I definitely want to talk about that, but I do want to talk a little bit about the business of work for hire, because I think that this is very much a teachable position, and I know people hate that term, but it's the easiest way how to describe it. Life lesson, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is fascinating is obviously there's a real big debate in comics right now. Do you go create your own thing and you own it, and then you live and die with the consequences? You do whatever the hell you want with your book. Or do you go and work for Marvel and DC, write Batman, get a nice payday, get paid well, maybe move up in the ranks, increase your page rate, and make sure you got some stable income, and then really hone your skills and figure it out? Because we've seen both paths. And I'm curious, because you're on both. You did Path A, which was work for hire, and you also created Rex Mundi. And I don't know the full ownership of that, but you moved from Dark Horse to Dynamite, I think, or was it the other way around? Or was it you moved from Image to Dark Horse, right?
That's right.
I'm making sure I get it right. It's been a long day. What do you think is sort of going on with that? Because I'm curious your take, because to me, work for hire, if you got a kid in college, well, you need a payday. And I think that's something that people need to understand as well. And so I'm really curious your thought on that, because it is a big debate in comics right now, and you've done both.
I have done both. I'm just speaking from my personal experience. Obviously, people have gone to work and done for hire work and been very successful at it. And I think that's great. I think that's fine. That was not how things worked out for me. For me, in my life, good things have always happened when I took a chance and when I did things on my own and worried less about what other people thought and just did what was in my heart and followed my instincts. So that has been the story of my career. I have done a lot of for-hire work. It has never led to the bigger opportunities that I thought it would lead to, which is sad. But every single for-hire script that I wrote, I did the best possible job I could at the time. I don't know how well other people get paid on for-hire works. For me, the payment was never great. So,
I'll preface it this way. Obviously, we look at somebody like Scott Snyder, and Scott Snyder had an amazing run on Batman. I think it's one of the best runs on Batman, those 50 issues. And then he did a lot of other stuff for DC, but then he did some stuff for Image. And then now he's created his own brand and his own line. And this is where I get very confused with comics, because this is very much business at this point, where it's the idea that I don't know if he went and created these books without Batman and without doing all the work in DC and creating what I view as clout and a name and a brand, that his book would have the same respect. He would have the same comicsology deal. People would be like, I'm going to follow Scott Snyder as a writer. And it sort of goes back to the idea that, are we following writers? Are we following stories? Or does it catch our eye? And that's what I think is very interesting right now about comics. And with indie, it gets complicated, because I'm guilty of this, and I'm the first person to say it. I back a lot of Kickstarters, not because I give a damn about the story, but there's a cover artist I like on that Kickstarter. And I'm a very artist collector. So if you have an Ebass or a Paul Green in your Kickstarter, I'm taking a look at it. Doesn't matter what your story is. Your story could be shit, but I'm not going to pick your book because I want that cover, because that cover is awesome. So this is where I'm curious, because I don't know what your perspective is, and I find it fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. So my perspective is this. I wish I had been given a chance to write Batman, but I don't really I don't gravitate towards superhero comics particularly. I think they're great. I think they're fine. I think they're wonderful. But, I'll never forget, I was working on a Trauma movie. It was a Citizen Toxie. It was the Toxic Avenger Part 4. And I was an intern for the special. It was me and another guy, and kids. We were kids at the time. We were, we both wanted, I thought, oh, that'll be cool. We'll do special effects. I'll learn how to do movie special effects, like prosthetics and stuff, with makeup, special effects makeup for one summer. And, it was me and this other kid. We were both sort of vying for the job of getting the internship at the special effects house. And this other kid, man, he slept on the floor. He lived there. He cleaned up after, and he got the job. And I was pissed off at first. I was just like, I'm much better than he is. How, he just, what a kiss ass. What a, I was mad. I was mad about it. I thought, oh, look at him. He's just trying to ingratiate himself. And then I realized that my thinking about it flipped around. Just, oh, wait a minute. This guy lives, sleeps, and breathes special effects. This isn't just something fun that he wants to do for one summer. This is what he wants to do with his life. And in my conversations with him, I realized that was the case. So I was able to let it go after that. The reason he got the internship and I didn't is because he was on a crusade. It was a life mission for him. And for me, it wasn't. And I had to be honest with myself about that. And maybe that's me in superhero comics. I think they're great, but I don't think that that's going to be my personal path to glory, to fortune and fame and riches. It sounds like maybe for Scott Snyder, he has a very different story.
Because now what he's doing is not superhero stuff, but it's almost like that name. And this is my whole question. And I'm looking at the market, and I'm looking at the entire comic sphere, where I'm now questioning and saying, why do people buy a book? Why are people backing something? Where does that trust get built? And have we now gone into a realm where stories don't matter, but names do? And this is a really complicated question, because there are people who, if Scott runs a Kickstarter, I'm going to back that Kickstarter, and I don't know why, but it's like, I trust the name, I trust the brand, I trust the talent behind it. And I don't know if that's what's happened now with, all of comics, and even with indie, I'm that way too. There are certain projects I'm like, I'll take a spec on somebody's indie book,
Hmm.
but I have a bunch of friends, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna trust this project, and I'm only backing this project because so and so worked on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like, and maybe I'm a different breed, and
Hmm.
maybe my thinking is wrong, but that's how I think, and I don't think I'm the only one who thinks like this.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious because coming into the indie scene, and obviously coming out of, I guess, corporate,
Hmm.
this is really interesting because you have a different perspective than I do.
That's right. Everyone's path. I don't think there's any one path to success that any one person is going to have. Are we moving into a world? Yes, I think this is one of the many problems. And these problems, there are a lot of problems in the comics industry. There are a lot of cultural problems that extend way beyond comics. But one of the biggest problems that I perceive is we are moving into a world of branding and brand identity, where the brand identity, whether it's a person's name or a franchise, I hate that word, franchise. And to some extent, it's a necessary evil. I understand you need to think that way to some extent. But in my opinion, especially as a writer and a creator, you should only be thinking that way at an absolute bare minimum that you absolutely have to. And people get caught up in branding. And yeah, I think I think it's just incontrovertibly true. I don't think it's undeniable. Think about whatever the last movie you saw was that had a big brand name identity attached to it. Take away the brand, would it still be a good movie? Would you still be interested in it?
That's a good question. That's a great question. I mean, I don't remember the last movie I saw per se, and even a theater, but I'm seeing Sonic the Hedgehog too.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't. I mean, it's Sonic the Hedgehog, so it's a little hard. I don't know what the branding exactly is in Sonic the Hedgehog, but there's Sonic the Hedgehog. Like it's, I'm going to see it because it's Sonic the Hedgehog, and I played Sonic the Hedgehog video games growing up.
Right. You have that emotional, you have an emotional connection to it. And that's very, very valuable to a film studio. That emotional connection is solid gold. And they know it. They know it. And they trade off of it. And it becomes, in my opinion, it becomes very exploitative, very, very exploitative of people.
But I'm going because I want to. It's also a low commitment where it's a $13 commitment. It's not like it's a $13,000 commitment. Where and this is where because you brought something up about branding and even
Mhm.
talking about Kickstarters, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I get priced out at a certain
Mhm.
point on
Yeah.
Kickstarter, and there are certain people who price me out. You're
Mhm.
charging me 25 bucks for a cover A. You're fucking crazy.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'll spend $10 on a Kickstarter. I'll spend
Mhm.
12 bucks on a Kickstarter because I get it. You're kickstarting a book or an Indiegogo, but
Mhm.
25 bucks for a cover A. And we talk about becoming exploitative. It's like if you create an emotional connection and then you charge
Yeah.
me 25 bucks, like I think that's a massive problem where things get too
Yeah.
expensive. And
Absolutely.
that's a big problem in comics right now, I
Mhm.
feel. And I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think Kickstarter's helping those issues, and I don't think Indiegogo's helping that because it's really pricey.
Um, I'm going to be starting an Indiegogo campaign myself, probably an Indie. I don't know. I'll be doing some kind of crowdfunding campaign for the comic I'm currently working on. I think it's really important. I'm committed to, companies that I like and admire, companies like Honda, Costco. They just deliver great value. That's what really gets me excited on an entrepreneurial level is offering people good value. So for me, for my Kickstarter, I think it's important for us or whatever it might be, our crowdfunding campaign, whatever platform we use. We want to make sure we have a lot of tiers. So if you, because different people have different budgets. So if you have less money to spend, there's a tier for you. If you have a lot of money to spend, there's a tier for you also. So I couldn't agree more. I think that it's important to make sure you have a product for everybody. Just like at Costco, the hot dog and soda. It's one of my favorite stores. It's one of my. This is like a legendary corporate CEO board meeting. The guy, his name is Steve, like the guy that started Costco, and this was back in the '90s too. Still to this day, the hot dog soda combo at Costco costs $1.50. It's crazy. They lose money on every single one. So back in the '90s, they said, Steve, we really need to uh, increase the price on the hot dog soda combo. And she said, if you if you increase the price of the effing hot dog, I'll effing kill you.
So now let's talk about this because this is something that I feel that certain people on in comics miss completely.
Yeah.
It's the idea that you have to maintain your audience and
Mhm.
you almost have to have an entry level price to bring somebody into your
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And even if you lose money in the initial,
Right.
nobody comes into Costco per se and says, I just want a hot dog and soda.
Right.
Chances are they're going to spend more money
Right.
elsewhere. They're
Right.
going to buy some milk. They're going to
Right.
buy something else,
Right.
and all of a sudden, you got somebody in your store and you also have that great corporate story.
Right.
And, we talk about problems in comics. It's like comics have gotten really expensive.
Yeah.
Even when you go to your comic store, a DC book or a Marvel book is $5-6 now. And that's way too pricey for a comic book. And so, like, how did we get there? Because that's something that I don't get. And I get that things have changed, inflation has increased, and a variety of other stuff, but I still don't get how they can't figure out how to make it cheaper.
I think another problem is just frankly, is sales are down. Yes, I understand overall sales are up, but that's Japanese comics. But Marvel and DC sales are not in great shape. So you get into a death spiral where you start increasing the prices to cover the costs of, because you printing is an economy of scale. All the cost is in the setup, the ink and the papers, basically. Not quite free, but it's very, very inexpensive. So big difference in the price margin if you have a 5,000 copy run versus a 500,000 copy run. Big difference in margins. So they're operating on tighter margins. So they increase the prices, which drives more people away, which depresses sales even more than they raise prices. It's a very, very bad cycle to get into. Yeah.
So to even talk about that, also hasn't, and this is probably where we're going to get really controversial. There's been a lot of what is called wokeism.
Yeah.
There's been a bunch of creators who say, if you don't like my book, don't buy it.
Right.
I don't think we need to say who that is. It's pretty
Mhm.
well documented,
Mhm.
who that is. And I don't think that person's a bad person at heart. I just think that person hasn't read the room at all and did no favors for Marvel or DC at all. And so, what do you think? Because I think a lot of people have basically said, "Okay, you told me not to read your book. I'm listening," and then your
Right.
book sales are shit. Like
Right.
it's logical in that realm.
Right.
And so, what do you think has really contributed to people sort of leaving the big two and even the big three at this
Um,
point? Like,
yeah. Well, a comment like that, was it Kelly Sue DeConnick? I think her name is. I don't know. I have no problem saying anyone's name. I don't care.
oh, I got no problem saying that. I just forgot the name slightly, but it was
Yeah.
on sci-fi. I got no problem saying it.
Yeah.
Because what is she gonna do? Deny it? It's video. Like,
It's like, well, mission accomplished. I mean, if that's what you wanted, if you wanted people to not read your comic, then mission accomplished. Um, I think it's almost impossible. I've heard arguments, oh, no, it didn't make any difference in sales, and it doesn't make any difference what people do on Twitter. I don't think that that's true. And, well, I don't think it's true, but there's no way to actually know. I mean, the sales are bad before they say something incendiary and extremist on Twitter, and then the sales are bad afterwards. But so okay, that's a good point.
isn't it the idea that if I tell you to go fuck yourself,
Right,
and then I ask money from you,
right.
that's
No,
moronic.
exactly.
But what happened to me is I ran a Kickstarter, right?
Hmm.
In January to raise funds for this. There were
Hmm.
people who attacked me. One of the people who attacked me for saying, "Oh, I don't know why you're doing this,"
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they are a project manager for a bunch of Kickstarters, and then they asked if I would interview one of their guests. Why would you
Mm.
attack me and then ask to be on my show? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
logically that makes no sense. And that
Yeah.
what?
Here's what I think is going on. Maybe this is what's going on, and I don't know. I've had this experience with book editors or people who have wanted to work with me. They've been really aggressive and negative and critical with me. I've had this happen on multiple occasions, and I'm sort of polite. You sort of listen politely, and then they they don't really even understand that you're just being polite and listening to them. I don't really have to. And then they want to work with you. They want to work with you. I've had this. This has happened in a number of different contexts with a number of different people. I just like. They think that they're being. They think that you're going to appreciate all that tough talk. And that, oh wow, this person. Oh, this person's really sharp and really savvy. And oh man, I got all these problems, and they're the only ones who can help me. But it's just such a bad way to drum up business. It is just like we're talking about. If you don't like my comics, don't read them.
Because for me, I'm like, I don't think you know who the fuck I am. Like that's my response, is that I'm a tough son of a bitch. And
Right.
like I remember everything.
Right.
And this is where this gets complicated.
Right.
And this is why I think, like, when we have people attacking me, I mean, I am banned, and Dan Slott blocked me on Twitter. He disagreed with my politics on certain aspects of COVID. And he said, if you mention it one more time, I'm going to block you. And then I was like, okay. And I pushed the line. And I'm like, so you blocked me, yet you're writing Spider-Man. And yet and what does Spider-Man stand for? I mean, Spider-Man and Captain America and you're a comic writer, and we're talking about freedom of speech and the principles of freedom of speech. Like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
Meaning that, and I view that, and that's what shifted my political views on Marvel and DC. I'm like, wait a second. This didn't happen years ago, where if you're writing a comic book, the thing that has pushed freedom of speech in literature further than anything else in the last 50 years, and then you don't believe in it when you have been a comic writer for almost 25 years, like, no wonder why we're having problems in comics.
I don't know Dan Slott personally. He doesn't know who I am. I guarantee it. He doesn't care. But that kind of attitude, the way he carries on, like Twitter, there's a word for that, Andrew. That's called bullying. That's called bullying. He comes off like a bully and a jerk. And that's not a great way to sell comics, I don't think. I have seen instances of that bullying behavior with him on Twitter, and it's very distasteful. I think with the creator, there's a huge power differential between someone who's living the dream of writing and creating comics, especially being a writer, because you just write something, and someone who's actually talented, who has an actual talent such as drawing, goes and makes amazing drawings out of your art. I mean, could there be anything better than that? I don't think so. So for someone like that to go and take someone who's just a fan or a reader and have that kind of attitude, it rubs me so the wrong way. It so rubs me the wrong way. I don't know if you saw this, but they did with Dan Slott. They did a like a documentary about him and Iron Man 2020 or something like that. He did not, in my opinion, he did not come off very well. I think they thought it would be cute or funny or something like that. I did not find it to be. I think these people are completely unaware of how they are coming off, how they're presenting themselves. Whether it's someone like Dan Slott or Kelly Sue DeConnick. They call it EQ. Have you ever heard that term, Andrew? EQ? There's IQ, which is intelligence quotient, and there's EQ, which is like emotional intelligence. You cannot believe the lack of emotional intelligence. It's unbelievable.
Because also what I find, and I don't know at this point, and this is why I'm fascinated, because in case nobody knew, you just came out and you've come out to Comicsgate, and one of the things that's happening to me, and look, I'm not Comicsgate, I'm not any side. I interview whoever I want, I talk to whoever I want. I'm a free speech absolutist, and I will interview everybody, whether you're an extreme progressive or an extreme conservative. It doesn't matter to me. If you want to talk about comics and you treat me with respect, and there's certain rules on my show that are normal societal rules, right? And if you come on and that's that, if you curse me off or talk shit behind my back, well, we're gonna have a problem. But one of the things is that at this stage, I have limited amount of money to spend on entertainment collectively. And so I now need to look at people's attitudes and what they've done, how they've treated people. and even and what their entanglements are. And when somebody like Dan Slott does something, or Sally Sue DeMcConnick does something,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really want to buy your book. You seem like
Right.
an asshole.
Right.
And do I want to continue this? Because I believe you shouldn't give a drunk a drink, right?
Right. 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 That's a good way of thinking. That's a great way of thinking of it. Yeah. That's a great way of
And
thinking.
look, I got no problem where there are people in Comicsgate, and not to attack your clan per se, but there's
Mhm.
some bad people who I think have crossed lines,
Mhm.
and I think that there are some nasty people in there, just
Mhm.
like in any organization.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to support their work either, but there's
Yep.
plenty of good people there too.
Mhm.
So, that's how I view it, is that if
Mhm.
you're an asshole, why the fuck do I want to give you money so
Yeah.
you could be a bigger asshole?
There is mm, I the style I don't, I take responsibility for how I carry myself, and for how I comport myself in the world. I can't take responsibility for other
Oh, I'm
people.
not I'm not shifting
Yeah.
responsibility on
No,
you.
and you didn't even apply that. I'm just saying, I think people could handle themselves better. I think that there are better ways to talk to people. There are better ways to carry yourself in the world. I think, and I think my prediction would be that we're gonna have it's gonna come full circle, and um, these kinds of behaviors always catch up with people in the long run. They always catch up with people in the long run. But I'm not here to tone police anybody either. My biggest concern is critical social justice ideology. In my opinion, is or it's wokeness. That's what wokeness is. The technical term for it is critical social justice. That's what wokies call wokeness. They call it critical social justice. That to me is a very, very serious, very, very serious problem. Some people say, oh, it's just a few kids on Twitter. It's just, a few blocks in Portland. It's not a big deal. It's all going to blow over. I don't think that's true. I used to tell myself that. I
Yeah,
don't believe that
we're
anymore.
gonna talk
I
about
do
this.
not believe that. I do not believe that anymore. That to
I
me is the overriding problem. Yeah.
I don't think I agree with you, but I don't agree with you probably to the extent that you agree, where I
Hmm.
think it's a problem. I think that it's out of proportion. I
Hmm.
also think that the economics are going to solve that problem. Now, I am a free market economics guy,
Hmm.
where I think money solves every problem. I really do. And what I mean by this is not throwing money, but your when gas is $5 at the pump, your
Yeah.
political position changes, because
Right.
gassing up your car means you
That's
can't
true.
get ice cream. That's what it means,
Yep.
right? Or you say, "Oh man, I could save money and put it into the stock market. This year, I only put $4,500 in versus 9 grand."
Hmm.
That's when you start getting upset, because you
Hmm.
start realizing, "Oh shit, my pocketbook's getting hurt." So I
Hmm.
believe it's money, then it's your family, then it's getting ice cream for cheap amount of money, or any food you want for cheap amount of money and having it available. And then I think it's your politics.
Hmm.
I think it goes in that order. And I think wokeness is affecting economics. And I think we haven't reached the critical point politically where people are like, oh my God, I am getting fucking slammed here
Hmm.
because it's woke bullshit.
Hmm.
And look, there are some fair points from some people on woke positions that are merited in fair points that should be addressed in society. But there's a lot of other points that are ridiculous.
This is one of the main tactics. Have you ever heard the term Mott and Bailey? Ever heard that term?
I have not, and hopefully I'm not doing it.
Okay. No. You are not. The reason social justice, critical social justice, is so powerful is that they make good. The diagnosis is usually pretty good. Racism is bad. Yeah, I totally agree. It's awful. Sexism is bad. Homophobia is bad. It's terrible. All those things are terrible. The problem is they make those observations and then they say, because racism is bad, the only solution is critical race theory. That's the only way that we can address the problem of racism is with critical race theory. So that's the Mott and the Bailey. A Mott and Bailey is a medieval fortification. The Mott is the fortress on the hill. It's very easy to defend, but it sucks. It's dark and it's moldy and it's drafty and it's not pleasant. The Bailey is the farmlands, which are not easy to defend, but that's what you really want. So this is what they do. Every time they get attacked, they retreat to the Mott. The Mott being, we're just really concerned about racism. And this is all we want. We just want to teach children about racism. We just want to address the painful legacy of racism in America. That's the Mott. And then as soon as they leave, they go into the Bailey again, and they get into all the actual specifics that they're actually interested in talking about. Things like systemic racism, interest convergence, conflict theory, standpoint epistemology. These are all concepts in critical race theory. And they're all really, 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 really bad. And there's no reason to think that these concepts are going to help at all in solving the problem of racism. In fact, in my opinion, it makes the problem of racism worse, not better. These ideas actually make the problem worse, and they perpetuate it. So that's the Mott and the Bailey. So 100% agree with you, Andrew. They are 100% right to say that racism is bad. I totally agree with that.
I don't think anybody thinks that racism is good, or any.
Yeah, there's like 5 people, right? Exactly. Yeah, right. It's just right. Anyone thinks that, it's just like.
I mean, look, there has been groups in society that have thought that, no question about it.
Yeah.
But the Nazis are a good example. The Nazis are horrible people.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't like a Nazi. You cannot go and say, I love Nazis, go team go. Right, that doesn't happen in society.
Yeah.
And the group that does is pitiful. Right. I mean, there's a Nazi group that marched, and the facts about it is that there's 126 of them. They looked sad. They looked broken in a lot of ways, and they had to make 3 or 4 trips in their U-Haul to get them all out of there because they couldn't even afford another bunch of cars. So is it really a threat what that group is that marched on like the Capitol that was 126? There was no violence, and nobody in their right mind views it as a threat in reality. And I'm Jewish when I say that. So but let's not pretend here. But this is now seeping into literature and other things like comics. And that's where this gets all tricky, because now you try to, sneak it in there, and nothing against Pride Month, but you have DC and Marvel doing Pride covers.
Right.
I like those covers. They're cool. They're fun. I'm going to make bank on them eventually because somebody's going to buy it. Don't get me wrong. I'm a capitalist.
Yeah. It would be interesting to know how many white supremacist groups there are out there. Like, it's a problem. Like, it's bad. It's like there was a Sikh temple. There was it was terrible. There was a mass murder at a Sikh temple. It was a white supremacist with an assault rifle, I think, shot it up. That was terrible. It does happen, and it's bad, and it's a threat. But the question is, you have to have a proportionate response to that threat. And to what extent is it a threat? How many neo-Nazis are there actually out there? And the response has to be proportionate. It's funny you bring up Judaism, because critical race theory in specifically is just it's a disaster. I mean, it's virulently anti-Semitic. It's repulsively anti-Semitic, because they have a theory, Andrew, that it's called prejudice plus power, that if you have a superior claim to a lived experience of oppression than someone else, you cannot be racist towards them. It's not racism. It's not bigotry. In fact, the only reason that you are being bigoted or racist or prejudiced towards them is because of white supremacy, because you've been so traumatized by the legacy of white supremacy and the ongoing living, breathing traumas that white supremacy is inflicting on you. So being Jewish is a very weak claim to a lived experience of oppression and critical race theory. And so it's very tolerant it ends up being very, very tolerant of anti-Semitism, as long as it's coming from someone with a superior claim to a lived experience of oppression. They
It's
try to
very
lump yeah, they try to lump Jewish people in with all white people. It's just such a like gross thing to even have to think about. Like,
it's also
it's
there
gross.
are
It's gross. It's gross.
there are I mean, and what gets complicated is that what if you have a Mediterranean Jew?
Right.
A
Like a
Mediterranean
Sephardic.
Jew
You
is
mean like a
different.
Sephardic or something like that, or
Oh, I'm just talking about somebody from Lebanon or somebody who is
Sephardic?
from
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know there's
Yeah.
Ashkenazi and then
Yeah.
Sephardic, and so I think it's Sephardic. And so now, if you have somebody who's Mediterranean, well,
Right.
they're not white, like
Right.
so. And then what if somebody converted to Judaism? Because you can
Right.
convert to Judaism,
Right.
and it gets complicated. And
Right.
now all of a sudden, how does that all play out? It just
Right.
becomes a disaster.
Right.
And it's very fascinating because obviously, when we're talking about all this has now seeped into literature
Hmm.
and into comics
Yeah.
and into a variety of other things.
Hmm.
And it's the idea that, and I don't know how you feel, but I pick up a comic book and my goal is to escape from all this bullshit.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Well,
it's
yeah, all the guys who wrote, Marvel Comics, all those guys were Jewish, and they probably saved Norse mythology. It would be indelibly linked. I don't know what's the right. I'm mixing my metaphors, but basically, the Nazis were also into Norse mythology. So, like, if not for Marvel Comics, all that stuff would just have the taint of National Socialism, the stink of it on it for forever and ever. Amen. So, I mean, yeah, a bunch of Jewish guys from New York pretty much single-handedly saved Norse mythology for the rest of us, as far as I'm concerned. And that's the spirit that I miss, that early spirit of Marvel. Those guys they started reading Norse mythology, and Norse mythology. I don't care what color your skin is. It's awesome. It's awesome. Who doesn't love Norse mythology? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter. Yeah. Yeah.
so to even talk about this because
Mhm.
I want to read good stories and
Yeah.
comics, right? And I'm at the stage where this is how I view it. If you have a black superhero and that black
Mhm.
superhero is a fucking badass and he's taking names and he's taking out enemies, I'm like, awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
If that hero's gay, what do I care what he does in his bedroom? What do I care
Mhm.
that he has a husband or he has a wife or it's a lesbian couple? Like I actually enjoyed Eat, Bake, and Kill, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. I think they're
Mhm.
a cute couple. I love it. I think it's
Mhm.
fun. I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem when we start making these characters, gay for the sake of making them gay,
Yes.
or we start doing things for the sake of doing it, not because there's a
Mhm.
good story behind it. And
Right.
we start mixing and messing up characters and then trying to evolve them. And then we create, I don't know what we create out of it, but it's kind of like, I got an idea. Why don't we create a brand new character? And it actually, on a business level, it probably would make even more sense to create a
Mhm.
brand new character
Yeah.
because what are DC and Marvel? They're gigantic IP farms.
Mhm.
So if you create a new character and you create 100 new characters every single year, one or two of them are going to be good, and you have 98 other IPs that you own, and you have two that are making you money, who cares? Because then 3, 4 years, 10 years down the road, you make a movie out of it and you make your real money.
That's
So,
right.
like, I don't get why they're instead taking the other route, Marvel and DC, because to me, it goes back to money.
Mhm. This is one of the things you have to understand about the woke. They truly don't care about money. They look at something like Marvel and DC is systemically racist, and they are going to purge it. Or it's systemically racist. It's systemically sexist. It's systemically homophobic, because that's what systemic oppression means. It means it's foundationally racist, sexist, and homophobic, or whatever. It's foundational. It's not like woven into the cloth. It is the cloth. So what they say is, we're going to come in and we're going to purge it of this systemic oppression. And if we break it, if we destroy it in the process, well, then it wasn't worth saving. That's fine. We don't. They do not mind destroying things. That's okay with them. We'll destroy it, and then something better will come up. So they do not care about money. I think you're 100% right, Andrew. Capitalism, at some point, capitalism will step in, because that's
Because
that's crazy. That
this,
is crazy, Phil.
this is how I view it. See, if I'm running Marvel and DC,
Mhm.
right? So, and I'm very honest, I said it in my last interview. I think Marvel and DC could beat the shit out of indie. I
Mhm.
think that they're letting indie play right now. I
Yeah.
really do. I think they're just saying, have a good time, guys, because when we want to hurt you, we're going to win. And I
Mhm.
take this approach where I'm a huge wrestling fan. I
Mhm.
love WWE, AEW. I think Vince is saying, okay, W, take CM Punk, take a bunch of wrestlers, take the Hardy Boys. I don't give a fuck because
Mhm.
Vince McMahon always wins in the end,
Yeah.
right? And the reason why is WWE has been around for almost 50 years at this point. They are
That long?
not
Wow. Wow.
almost 50. If it
Wow.
might be 45, it's pretty
Mhm.
close to 50 years. It's a pretty big company. That company's worth, if it was to be sold to like Disney, it's worth 9 to 10 billion easy.
Wow.
Just get 2 times basically outstanding stock shares plus free
Wow.
cash. They just brought in $1 billion just in revenue this year alone, and they're going to bring in more and more and more every single year
Not
moving
too
forward.
shabby. Aren't they based in
It
Stamford, Connecticut? Isn't that right? I think.
yeah, yeah, they got
Is
the
that right? Yeah,
flag,
so cool.
straight.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember
it's
driving by
awesome.
on the 95. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the way I see it is that if
Mhm.
I'm running it basically DC or Marvel, I'm like, look, I'm gonna go create every woke character in the batch,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna see what's gonna hit.
Mhm.
Not to purge it, but there's gonna be 300 characters that we're gonna burn through. Two
Mhm.
are gonna be likable because I view this like Miles Morales. Miles
Mhm.
Morales has made bank for Marvel.
Yeah.
But Miles Morales is a very shallow character, but he's made
Mhm.
bank for Marvel. How
Yeah.
many characters did they have to burn through to create that? But you know how much money that character has
Mhm.
generated? Billions for Marvel. Billions. And
Yeah.
will continue to generate billions. No question about it. The merchandising, the graphic novels, the movies, him showing up in a live action. I mean, the fact that they have a deal with PlayStation for an
Mhm.
exclusive PS5
Yeah.
with him, the video game market. I mean, legitly billions of dollars have been created off of that. So why wouldn't I want to go create that position?
Mhm.
And people can disagree, but I'm looking to get paid because if
Mhm.
I'm the CEO of DC, my bonus or Marvel is rooted in that performing well.
Yeah.
But I don't give a shit about the 98 other characters. I just want the winners.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think the comic book industry is very healthy right now. I'm sure you've seen this. DC is being spun off. AT&T made a big bet on media. They bought Warner's.
Oh, I know, I
It
know,
did
I know
not
all
pay off
about
for
it.
them.
I
Yeah,
know all
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
In which that I'm expecting it to
yeah,
appear in my portfolio any day now.
yeah. Oh, you got AT&T stock? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I've actually been waiting for this
It'll
for a
be
reason.
interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Why have you been waiting?
So I have been waiting
Hmm.
for I like AT&T because it's a good dividend stock.
Hmm.
Their dividend got slashed, but it's understandable, but it's still a good dividend stock.
Hmm.
They pay $1.11. And by the way, this is not financial advice, just so in case anybody's quoting me. This is all
Okay.
out there. Um, but I've been waiting because I knew they were going to spin off. But I
Mhm.
also am more interested in HBO Max and the several TV stations and the several things. Now, I'm not thrilled with the Discovery Edition because I don't think that adds much value. I really don't.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think that it gets rid of debt. I think it was very foolish for them to sell Crunchyroll if they were going to do the spinoff, which is an anime position
Mhm.
because I think they actually undersold that for about 1.2 billion AT&T.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think that I think DC is not the real play with Warner Media Discovery. What
Okay.
that's going to be. I think HBO Max and that big content library is
Mhm.
a big deal because the way I view media is I want as much content and I want a big library. I pay for Peacock because I love Law and Order SVU.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's every single season of SVU is on there, and they're adding new episodes every single Friday after it airs. So naturally, there's a huge library of content that now I have access to,
Right.
and that's what I think is very important.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think that DC is not going to change too much, but I also think that the guy who's taking over is a little bit more conservative
Mhm. Yeah.
than
Well.
the person
Yeah.
who was running before him, and so I
Right.
think there's going to be some tightening up, especially with the
Mhm.
CNN blocks and the news blocks. I think they're going to move a little bit, you know, more and more to the center.
Yeah. CNN has lost like 90% of its viewership. I mean, it's just. it's catastrophic. They have had I mean, catastrophic is not too strong a word. DC Comics is in real trouble. We'll see what happens. You said this guy's more conservative. I'm a little nervous. I'm sad. It's like you said, capitalism, you know, I think you're 100% right. Capitalism always wins in the end. I think you can make that argument actually even about the Civil War. They say, oh, capitalism is, you know, it's terrible, and slavery. No, capitalism doesn't hates inefficiency. And slavery, in addition to being bad and horrible and evil, it's extremely inefficient it's an extremely inefficient labor market. So the South were majorly handicapped back then. I don't even know where I'm going with this. I don't know where the hell I'm going. Excuse me. Capitalism. So, okay, yeah, this stuff. I mean, okay, yes, this too shall pass, but they can do a lot of damage in the meantime, and the damage is ongoing. This is why I say I think this is a bigger problem than people realize. They're doing damage, and they're going to continue doing damage, and it's not clear to me when it's going to end.
See, I take a different approach though, because I look at it differently. Where I don't think they're doing damage that hasn't already been done.
Okay.
I really don't think. I think all the damage in the last 20 years to media, to comics, to other positions has already been done. I really do. So I think that if we had another 10 years of this, it wouldn't make a goddamn difference. I think the damage in the US has already been done, but what hasn't been broken is capitalism. Because in the 20 years, the S&P has slayed dragons. All the ETFs that are like the S&P 100 and a variety of other stuff, and I view it very differently in barometers, where I view things on a financial level, and that's how I view the health of products in these companies. And now, look, AT&T is a nightmare as a company, but it's always been a nightmare. But I don't own AT&T for the sake of AT&T. I own it because they pay a good dividend.
Yeah,
you know, because I'm getting my capital back, and that's the whole point. Is that I'm a little bit of a different investor than other people, where I want my money back. And then I want more than my money back. I want the equity in my money back. That's all I want. So once I get both of those things, anything else I get is great. But I don't think that the damage they're doing is going to hurt anybody. In fact, because if we really look at it, I view DC as an intellectual property farm, where I just say, hey, they're testing it in the comics, and let them fuck it up as much as they want, because they're going to throw it into a movie, and they're not going to make the movie as bad as the comic, where they understand that the movie has to appeal to the general population. And you know, you can't go super woke in Batman that just came out. You can't. You just can't do it.
My grandfather had a saying, there's no problem so bad you can't make it worse. Things could get, I mean, you know, hold my drink. DC Comics says to you, hold my drink. I think we're already seeing a lot of it. It's getting more, I've seen videos of people I respect a lot saying, oh, it's just a fad. It's just a fad, this woke stuff from like 2019, 2018, 2016. This is more than a fad. It's getting worse and worse. Something called cognitive dissonance. This is a theory of psychology, kind of a theory of behavior, what motivates behavior. The problem is this: once you've declared that everything is racist and everything is sexist and everything is homophobic, how do you climb down back off of that? That's no longer a fad. Now you're on a religious crusade. You're on a religious crusade at that point. If you really believe that, if you say that, if you say everything is systemically sexist and racist, what do you see come out the next day and say, oops, nope, I was wrong?
It's
not so easy.
We'll take a step out. So for 1 second, and the reason why I'm going to do this, and I think it's going to come full circle, Chris Rock, Will Smith.
Yeah.
The correct response is Will Smith should not go to jail. This is a stupid position, and there are better crimes that the nice police officers can deal with, right? Yeah. But by definition, he should not be in jail. That is ludicrous. I'm sorry if you disagree, have a problem with that, but it was a slap. It's an assault by definition. I agree. But you know what? He should be dealt with civilly. That is a civil issue. And if Chris Rock's sitting for $30 million, no problem.
Mhm.
But he should have been removed from the Oscars. But the fact that people are saying Chris Rock's a bully, the fact that when Chris Rock crossed the line, and I'm like, it's a joke and it's a
Yeah.
bad joke, sure, but you can't be hitting people for bad jokes. And
Mhm.
the fact that America, and then not 50% of America, this was like 5% of America who had a large voice, just acted like they were 50%. And that's
Mhm.
why I kind of say, wait a second, with all this
Yep.
stuff, I'm like, it's 5% is acting like they're 50%, but the other
Mhm.
95% is like, yeah, we're not
Mhm.
buying this, but we're just gonna shut the fuck up and sit in the corner and
Mhm.
pretend, but we disagree because we don't want to fight you because you people are gonna
Right.
cost us businesses. There
Mhm.
have been people who have basically made me and said I'm transphobic. I
Mhm.
have never ever made a transphobic statement. On
Right.
my thing was, don't shop here, don't do this. And I'm like, I don't have a store. Like,
Right.
what do you mean don't shop here?
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay. And I open and the reason why they said it, I said, so you disagree with me about Victoria's Secret not having a trans model.
Mhm.
Okay, don't shop there. Hurt them where they hurt the most.
Right.
Hurt their people. Let everybody you know, don't shop there. If
Right.
you don't like your products, don't shop there. Problem
Mhm.
solved. And
Mhm.
then I said, "Do you want to debate this?" And we'll do it live. We'll have a very civil discussion.
Mhm.
And you know what it is? If I act like an asshole, and that's when they started trying to ruin my business.
I'm sorry to hear that. This is the problem. What's going on? You could interpret the statements you made. You could interpret that as being transphobic if you wanted to. You could interpret anything as being transphobic. You could interpret anything as being sexist or racist. I saw an article about there's how ice cream trucks are racist because they played this song "Turkey in the Straw." The original lyrics for the song are not racist, but at some point, someone wrote a racist verse for "Turkey in the Straw," which was bad and it's wrong. You shouldn't do it. But because someone did that, now "Turkey in the Straw" is indelibly linked. Again, there's that word again, indelibly. Now "Turkey in the Straw" is racist forever and ever. And anything even remotely associated with that song, "Turkey in the Straw," is now racist. But that's just an example of the kinds of logic that they use. So they're just taking what you say and they're being extremely uncharitable with you. They're being extremely uncharitable with you. And they're calling you transphobic. And that's not right. And in return, they're also demanding, they're demanding that you extend maximum charity to them and that you assume that everything that they do and say is well
Well,
intentioned. So
well,
it's
well, 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 the story gets better. I actually consulted a lawyer, and I was thinking about suing, and
well,
then I
okay.
should have. I should
Yeah.
have. I should have. I should have. And it's not about money.
Hmm.
It's about bankrupting the other side.
Hmm.
These lawsuits for me, if you come after me, is I know the other side can't afford it, and I will
Hmm.
drag the motherfucker out.
Yeah.
And which
Yeah.
that I understand how to bankrupt somebody very efficiently.
Yeah.
And I understand how to start a war and end one because
Hmm.
there's many, many ways how to end a war. And if you know
Yeah.
your opponent can't afford it, you could hit
Yeah.
them hard. And
Yeah.
and that's what has to happen. I think.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
I'm very honest about this, and it's a very draconian position.
Hmm.
And it might get me in trouble, but I think that on this shit, people have to stop playing nice. They have to start saying "fuck you." Now, if somebody comments and somebody's being genuine, and look, I've had discussions with people, and we're having a discussion about this, and it's a very
Hmm.
civil discussion, and it was given back, and I let the person speak, they let me speak, and you notice that's perfectly fine. Because if somebody comes to me and says, I want to have a discussion and I disagree with you politically, I'm open because they're extending grace and I'm
Hmm.
extending grace back. It's when grace is not extended that it becomes a problem.
Yep. Yep. Everything is everything that wokies do is in bad faith. It's all bad faith communication. Just like that, assuming everything that you say, interpreting everything you say in the worst possible way. The Mott and Bailey, it's a very dishonest tactic. And they use all of these dishonest rhetorical tactics. It's all bad faith communication. It's all extremely dishonest. It's one of my least favorite things about it, Andrew. Yeah.
And the reason why, and it gets fascinating because what I'm now looking at with comics is that, and the reason why I want to bring this all back to comics is that
Mhm.
with DC and Marvel, there is that stuff woven into their comics in a lot of ways, you know? And
Yep.
now what's starting to happen is that I think on Kickstarter with a bunch of people, they're doing some pretty fun and some enjoyable comics. And then I think that people are saying, look, I just want to produce comics. And Marvel and DC are never going to look at this. And I don't want a corporate overlord, for lack of a better word, telling me what I can't put in my
Mm,
book. You know, that's one side of it. Somebody also says, look, I can do this by myself. And, you know, over 4 issues, I'm going to make more in 2 years than I would make at Marvel and DC for just the book alone, where they might be paying me $125 a page rate and I might get 6 books out of them, but I'll make more overall on the Kickstarter in 2 years than
mhm.
I would make at DC Marvel.
Yeah.
Or they're saying, look, you know, they're gonna fucking hate me.
Mhm,
And they're gonna basically say, we don't like your politics.
mhm,
Because I don't know if you know people, but I know people who shut the fuck up in Marvel and DC.
mhm,
Because if
mhm.
they talk, they're not gonna get work and they're gonna get nothing done and they're gonna get kicked off their book. And
Right.
I've had people say, hey, we can't talk about my beliefs on my show
Mhm.
because I want to still work for this company and I'm making like 250 a page.
I don't think it's worth it. If you're talking to people like that, I would say quit. It's not worth it. It's not worth $250 a page. And they own everything. They own everything that you do, your blood, sweat, and tears. It's not worth it. It's not a good job. If you can't speak your mind, there is nothing wrong with being politically conservative. I'm not conservative. I used to be a liberal. I am definitely not a liberal anymore. Definitely not. But I'm not a conservative either. But there's nothing wrong with being a conservative. Um, a, a quote unquote good job that you're not allowed to just like speak your mind about things that are not even, well, there's room for disagreement, sure, but it's not necessarily controversial or bad to have a conservative position on things. So if anyone's doing that, quit. Quit. It's not a good job. It's not a good job. And if you can't quit, get yourself to a place where you can. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
So I've left a job where I couldn't speak my mind and the ship was sinking. And then I went into another organization where I knew what to say, when to say, but you know, it wasn't an issue where I was lobbying. And
Hmm.
I was at a lobbying firm. So clearly there was an
Okay.
ideology, but it
Yeah.
was dealing with veteran education,
Hmm.
which is, you know, and look, there's rooms for disagreement on
Hmm.
strategy and things like
Hmm.
that. But if you're saying veterans should not have an education, well, that's not the job for you, you
Right.
know,
That's right.
which is a little different, because, but you could, there was liberals and there was conservatives in that job.
Hmm.
But again, the idea is that DC is a different place
Yep.
because DC, when you're at a lobbying firm, politics don't matter. It's the mission of your lobbying group that matters, and that's a whole different ballgame, though, completely. But I agree. And DC and Marvel used to not be that way.
That's
They
right.
used to not be that way. I mean, you know where Bane came from, right? You had Chuck Dixon,
Hmm.
who is very politically out there,
Hmm.
Graham Nolan, who's very political. They are very conservative.
Hmm.
And then the editor on that book is Denny O'Neil, who is extremely progressive.
Hmm.
And the three people I just mentioned are highly respected
Hmm.
Batman people.
Yeah.
By definition, they are arguably out of the top five. Those are three out of the top five.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, you know, Denny and Chuck and Graham worked perfectly fine, and there was political disagreements, and they're on a
Hmm.
Batman retreat, and they're talking about this stuff
Yeah.
and about different things with politics and ideas. But Denny never kicked Chuck off a
Right.
book. Now, eventually things change, but we're talking 7 years. You know, if you're working on a project for 7 years and you get fired after 7 years, chances are the team needed to be changed up.
Andrew,
It
I
probably
lost you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Audio is not coming through for me. I don't know if you can hear me. I cannot hear you. So it was just getting good too.
Oh man, I
About
could hear you. I could hear you.
can you
Can you
hear me?
hear
Can
me?
you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hmm. Um, maybe this is a
Did
sign from but what you're saying with that another thing I want to say about this, I don't accept that this is, oh, there's problems on both sides. There are problems with conservatives and problems with progressives. Yes, I agree that there are problems with conservatives. yes, 100% agree with that. But this problem of woke, this is overwhelmingly a problem amongst progressives. I do not think that this is an equal. I don't think both sides are equal, or not in this case. No, I don't think that's true. Nope.
You could hear me, right? I don't know. I don't know if you're joking now.
Oh man. I hope it's recording on your end. I just can't hear you. I don't know what happened.
Oh man, this is so weird. This is so weird. I don't know if he's messing with me or not.
Maybe it's
So
over. Oh, that's actually, it's good. You know, it's an hour. I got to go to bed. I got to get up and make breakfast for my children. I chop fruit for them and vegetables, and I never eat them. And I feed them marshmallows because they won't eat anything else.
well, I don't know if we're gonna end. Are we ending? I don't know. I'm gonna have to like use the private chat. You know.
I think this is it. Yeah, I think it's over. I mean, I love talking to myself. If you just want me to like ramble on more and more about the evils of critical social justice ideology.
Where can people
can find me. I have a YouTube channel. It's Crowfire Studios. I'm going to be focusing most of my effort on YouTube. Twitter's a little difficult for me. So YouTube, just do a search for Crowfire Studios. Crow like a bird, fire, one word, like flames, fire studios. That's me on YouTube. And at Twitter, I have my Twitter handle right there. Arvid the Twit on Twitter. I would really appreciate the follow. I have declared war on the elder gods, so every follow means a lot to me, and especially on YouTube. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw up this quick image right here, which is the band of the
Crow. Oh, we didn't even get to talk about that. Oh man, I'm working. Oh, these artists I'm working with. Oren has been such a Oren, he lives in Malaysia. He feels the same way I do about all this stuff. So what is the likelihood of that? Someone from Malaysia, Andrew? I think you and I are basically on the same page about a lot of stuff. And it would be fine if we aren't. I mean, people can disagree about this stuff. There's room for disagreement.
We're on the same page for most of it.
I think more people are disgusted by critical social justice ideology than led on. And the tide will turn. Capitalism will definitely have a hand in its destruction. I keep waiting for it to get better, and it just keeps getting worse. It gets worse and worse and worse. So I felt like the danger of speaking out just became less serious than the danger of staying silent, and that's why I declared war on Mickey Mouse.
Oh, Mickey Mouse has to go, everybody. But that's all I'm going to say. Mickey Mouse has to go. And obviously, I'm sure Arvid's going to be back at some point. Then we're going to talk about Band of the Crow and all that fun stuff. And obviously, this is a very intense conversation. We could have probably gone on for another 2 hours on that front. But I think we're going to end it. And on that note, I'm going to just say what my stuff is. Obviously, support my t-shirt. Check out me on Twitter. Buy my metal card. Do all sorts of stuff. Obviously, buy me a coffee. It means a lot. And on that note, I'm going to give him the final word. As soon as I type it.
I always want the final word. Oh, I'm going to have the final word. Mark my words. I will.
Well. On that note, it ends it.
Okay, thanks.